Welcome back to the ECHO Evolve On conference. Our next session, TrilliumGIS, a platform for sustainable asset and capability mapping, is presented by the Trillium Network for Advanced Manufacturing. I'd like to welcome Brendan Sweeney, Managing Director for the Trillium Network for Advanced Manufacturing. Over to you, Brendan.
Good morning. Sometime around March 2020, we learned we had a problem, a big problem. We had a generational crisis on our hands, and we weren't all that well prepared. But we stepped up, we pivoted, we mobilized, but too often felt like we were building the ship as we sailed it. During this crisis, we learned a few things. We learned that to face the crisis, we needed PPE. We learned that we didn't manufacture as much PPE as we needed. And then we learned what a ventilator was and how difficult ventilators are to make. During this crisis, we learned that we used to manufacture certain products in Ontario, like nitrile gloves and N95 masks. But then we stopped because it was cheaper for consumers and more profitable for companies to import and distribute those products rather than manufacture them. Whoops. At great cost, we learned about the critical importance of domestic manufacturing. But on a more optimistic note, we also learned that Ontario's manufacturing ecosystem is about the most diverse of any subnational manufacturing ecosystem in North America. We, as a community of professionals concerned with supporting economic development in Ontario, learned that when called upon, our manufacturers could mobilize and pivot to an extent not witnessed in generations. We learned we can call upon these manufacturers to come to our aid during emergencies, and they will respond, often with no contract. These manufacturers were, are, and will continue to be a big part of the solution to this crisis. We learned that our manufacturers are creative, innovative, and collaborative. Without them, we cannot guarantee a supply of food or medicine or the PPE that healthcare and emergency responders need to get the job done. Without them, we won't have the employment and tax revenues that our communities depend on once we realize the full extent of pandemic-related spending. The most recent lockdown is evidence that we're not out of the woods yet. One of the only certainties in 2021 is continued economic uncertainty with compound interest. To get through this, we need our manufacturers' help, and we need it today, we need it tomorrow, and we need it down the road. How did we learn all this? Well, we learned it through trial and error, through whatever means possible, by working early mornings and late nights. We put in a lot of effort, and we got a lot done, but I wouldn't say we were terribly efficient. If you are like me, you still find yourself scrambling from crisis to crisis on any given day. We're still figuring out who is actually manufacturing PPE and sanitizer in Ontario, and who is simply importing and reselling products with a Made in Ontario veneer. Or, in some cases, who is selling unlicensed and potentially unsafe product. Let's not kid ourselves. This stuff happens, as the folks at Dollarama, a publicly traded company, can attest. And it's incredibly unfair to the manufacturers that follow the rules. Manufacturers like Dentex, who are working in collaboration with First Nations procurement and the community of Wikwemkong to bring manufacturing jobs to Manitoulin Island. Medical device manufacturers like O2 and Synaptive that have partnered with Linamar, who are retooling automotive parts manufacturing and assembly lines to manufacture ventilator components. And manufacturers like Molded Precision Components, who are leading the development of the Soup to Nuts Medical Innovation Park in Simcoe County. But what about the next crisis? Have we taken the right steps to ensure we're better prepared? We want to say never again, but do we really know what that entails? That next crisis may be medical. It may be economic. It may be related to the weather or to climate change. It may be something else entirely. We won't know until it happens. Or maybe it won't be a crisis at all, but a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. Where a crisis demands our immediate and undivided attention, the best opportunities, especially investment and economic development opportunities, often announce themselves as tiny whispers, and they don't come along every day. Would it not be better to be prepared for the worst and the best? Just look at what we achieved during the crisis under duress, with no real end in sight. Imagine what we could achieve if we were well prepared, had a tangible goal, and if conditions were ideal. What would it mean to be better prepared? Well, for starters, it would mean having reliable, accessible, and up-to-date information about manufacturers and their capabilities available to economic development professionals, policymakers, and the manufacturers that are interested in stepping up. Information you could leverage to create deep knowledge and institutional memory within and across the diversity of organizations responsible for incenting economic development in Ontario. And, in our opinion, that information should be free and publicly available. No paywalls, no registration, no logins, no passwords to forget, and no one holding that information captive. That's what we're here to talk about today. But why does our opinion matter? Just who are we anyways? Well, my name is Brendan Sweeney. I'm the Managing Director of the Trillium Network for Advanced Manufacturing. Trillium is a provincially funded nonprofit organization founded by Paul Booth. Paul, a former Senior Associate Deputy Minister of Industry Canada, recognized the need for an organization like Trillium and made it a reality. Trillium's mandate is to raise awareness of Ontario's advanced manufacturing ecosystem with the intention of supporting growth and competitiveness. We want to be your first stop when you need information about manufacturing in Ontario. Our offices are located on the campus of Western University in London. As someone who holds degrees from McMaster and Queen's, you can probably imagine that I was a little apprehensive about the idea of going to work on campus at Western. But as it turns out, it's a great place to get done what we need to get done. We at Trillium have an amazing staff, many of whom are in the early stages of their careers. If our staff are any indication of what younger generations have to offer our organizations, then I am unreservedly optimistic about our future. Our staff are always engaged in a number of projects, sometimes in collaboration with some of you. These projects include profiling innovative Ontario-owned manufacturers, helping them tell their stories. You know they all have one. These are often the who knew stories that you just can't make up. Who knew that the fountains and water features at the Eaton Centre, Canada's Wonderland, Chicago's Millennium Park, and the Burj Khalifa in Dubai were made in Vaughan? Who knew that there's a craft brewery in a strip mall in Guelph with a wall-to-wall Siemens production system that rivals any of the equipment that the foreign-owned breweries use? Who knew that Multimatic is not only making the Ford GT supercar in Markham, but has also quietly opened several new plants in York Region over the past few years? Who knew? We like to tell these stories, and we'd like more of them to tell. Leads and warm introductions are always welcome. We are also aware that many manufacturers are having a hard time finding people to work for them. They are having a particularly hard time finding women and younger persons who want to work for them. But this is not true for 5 well-known Ontario manufacturers that have developed innovative strategies to attract, retain, and support the career development of women from the shop floor to the C-suite. You'll hear lots more about their stories when we release a new report in a couple of weeks. Or sooner, if you call me, I'll tell you all about it. In addition to telling all these stories, we spend a lot of time mapping Ontario manufacturing assets and capabilities, effectively learning about where manufacturers are located, what they do, and what they're capable of doing. That's what we're here to talk about today, specifically about TrilliumGIS, our open access and publicly available asset and capability mapping platform. We already talked a bit about why a tool like TrilliumGIS is important. So let's learn a bit more about how you can use TrilliumGIS during your next crisis or in your everyday work. And let's talk a bit more about what we plan to do with it in the future. So try the platform out and then connect with us so we can learn more about how we can improve it and build something that's valuable to you. What is TrilliumGIS? Well, at a fundamental level, it's an online map of manufacturing establishments in Ontario built on a new database. TrilliumGIS shows you the location of these establishments and some important information about each one. All of that information comes from publicly available sources. None of it is confidential. Right now, there are about 7,000 establishments in TrilliumGIS. Right now, those establishments are skewed towards certain industries, namely automotive, aerospace, food and beverage, automation and tooling, and pharmaceuticals. Right now, those establishments are skewed towards larger manufacturers. As such, the establishments in TrilliumGIS account for approximately 91% of manufacturing employment and 94% of manufacturing output in Ontario. All that said, we are adding hundreds of establishments every week. At the moment, we are making particular progress in York Region, Toronto proper, Mississauga, Ottawa, Guelph, and Waterloo Region. TrilliumGIS includes several features to help you find what you're looking for. You can use the search functions to find manufacturers based on their name, location, NAICS code, or other keywords. You can use the filter functions to find manufacturers that contribute to certain industries, like automotive, or aerospace, or food processing. TrilliumGIS is online today and available to you free of charge. If you would like a live demonstration of TrilliumGIS, please contact us and we'll make it happen. So what does TrilliumGIS show us? It shows us that manufacturing is alive and well in Ontario. It shows us that we can make almost anything in Ontario. It shows us that the GTA, especially in the 15-kilometer radius around where Brampton, Vaughan, Toronto, and Mississauga meet, has the most robust and diverse manufacturing ecosystem of any major urban center in North America. Toronto is the only metropolitan area in North America that manufactures cars and planes and vaccines and robots that get sent to space. You know who doesn't do that? New York, Los Angeles, Detroit, Chicago, Seattle, Houston, or Mexico City. Maybe it's about time we tell this story. And maybe it's about time we tell it a bit more often and a bit more emphatically. So, right now, TrilliumGIS doesn't show you everything that we've got. TrilliumGIS is just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots more beneath the surface. Namely, there's a relational database where we collect, store, and organize a lot of information. Think about it this way. TrilliumGIS shows you 6 or 7 columns of a spreadsheet. But for some industries, like automotive and aerospace, we have over 50 columns worth of information. In these columns, we track other variables like employment, wages, investment, ownership changes, customers, suppliers, and capabilities. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time to compile and to validate this information. And Trillium isn't a terribly large organization. I can assure you we do our best. And I can assure you that we want to come up with a system that allows us to share the entirety of this information with EDOs, but one that minimizes the risk that the information will end up in the hands of someone who will seek to resell it. If you have ideas of how we can do this, let's talk. So what's next for TrilliumGIS? Well, lots. TrilliumGIS is a work in progress. It always will be. As I noted, we're adding more establishments, hundreds every week. We're implementing a quality control system to ensure the information is up to date. We're working to improve the platform itself, to make it more intuitive, easier to use, to improve our mobile functionality. We hope that you will see some of these improvements soon and on an ongoing basis. We're working with partners to build industry-focused verticals. Based off the TrilliumGIS platform, these verticals will be deeper than they are broad. The first of these will likely be an automation and tooling, or Industry 4.0 vertical, that allows Ontario-based companies to showcase the full extent of their capabilities to the world. We anticipate this work will be carried out in collaboration with several industry associations and with any EDOs that are interested. Let us know. So before we wrap up and move to Q&A, I'd like to share some insight into how some stakeholders have used TrilliumGIS recently. The first involves baseball. There's a small startup baseball bat manufacturer in southwestern Ontario that recently received a big order. But they're small, and that order is too big for them to fill by themselves. They needed a partner who knows the baseball bat industry. Using TrilliumGIS, we were able to identify 4 other baseball bat manufacturers in Ontario. A deeper dive into our database showed that 2 of those 4 operated at a scale large enough to take on contract work, all in a matter of minutes. The result, we hope, is that one of these manufacturers can fulfill its order and another receives some valuable contract work. And equally importantly, that these manufacturers develop a relationship so that future work is not outsourced to competitors in the United States. The second is a bit more advanced. The Canadian leaders of a large automaker are trying to make a case for working with Canadian companies as they integrate more autonomous guided vehicles, or AGVs, into a planned production line. To do so, they need to be able to demonstrate to their foreign owners that there is a network of companies that have experience working with AGVs. They also needed to demonstrate that there's a network of companies available to supply the radio frequency identification tags and sensors, or RFID tags, that help guide AGVs. Again, TrilliumGIS helped that automaker identify several of these companies within minutes. In doing so, they may not only have directed some work to Ontario manufacturers, but they may have also created export opportunities as a result of these new business relationships. These are just a couple examples of how TrilliumGIS helps. If you have others, we'd love to hear them. If you see other potential uses or have some ideas that can help us overcome limitations, we'd love to hear those too. You can probably appreciate that collecting, reviewing, and updating all of this information takes time and effort. We find that the data is of the highest quality when we build it in collaboration with network partners. This is certainly the case with our aerospace and our brewery industry information, where we collaborated with provincial government and industry association partners, respectively, to collect and validate these data. The same holds true for individual municipalities and regions. There aren't many folks that know more about manufacturing across Ontario than Trillium. But it's very likely that you know more about manufacturing in your municipality or your region than we do. Like our industry-focused information, our municipal and regional information tends to be most comprehensive where we've developed it in collaboration. If you would like to collaborate, please let us know. Another way we'd like to collaborate is to convene a working group to discuss best practices in building and maintaining business and employer directories. Our idea would be to combine this knowledge into a how-to guide and possible training material that we would make available to economic development professionals across Ontario. You would like to participate in this working group, or you'd like more info, please let us know. Finally, we'd like to have some fun. We'd like to identify some skunk works or pilot projects, maybe something a bit out of the ordinary that builds off the TrilliumGIS platform. Innovative projects that go a bit deeper into an area that no one has gone before. We can provide the human resources and some of the expertise necessary to help carry out these projects. Maybe it's a deep dive into an industry or into companies that no one knows all that much about, but you feel are important. Maybe it means mapping companies that demonstrate their commitment to their communities in one way or another. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Bring us your ideas and we'd love to have a further discussion. So, we've shown you TrilliumGIS, we've told you a bit about it, we've conceived of TrilliumGIS as a public good. We're a provincially funded organization. We want you to use TrilliumGIS, and with your feedback, we can help make sure that it is something that can help you and that you will want to use. Perhaps more importantly, we hope that TrilliumGIS can serve as a platform for collaboration. If you are interested in engaging in a more structured discussion about data collection, best practices, please get in touch. If you have an idea for a skunk work or a pilot project, please get in touch. We have some people and some expertise, and I think we can help. If you have any other ideas, questions, comments, or feedback, let's talk. I think we have a few minutes now. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Brennan. So we will now open it up for questions from the attendees. If you would like to pose a question to Brendan, please use the Q&A button right here at the bottom of the screen. That way I can see all the questions. And if you put them in the chat, I might not be able to see them. So I'll be watching that Q&A section. So let's kick it off with a question that I have for you, Brendan. Where are some of the best places to find accurate information about manufacturers?
That's a great question, Kate. I mean, there's so many different places we can go. One of our favorite places to go is government repositories of licenses. If you're making ice cream in Ontario, if you're a craft brewery in Ontario, if you're making pharmaceutical products in Ontario, or even if you're making Energy Star rated windows and doors, you have to have a license. Those licenses either reside within the province or within the federal government. And they are, to Canadian citizens. These lists of licenses are publicly available. So that's often one of the places where we start. And that can, if you think about with the window and door manufacturers, that's 120 right there. With some of the pharmaceutical manufacturers, that's 150 right there. It's an easy way to start. With the craft brewers, that's about 300 right there. So it's a great way to start. Getting information on certain industries and being reasonably assured that that information is good.
Fantastic. And we've got our first question here from Jose. Do you network or collaborate with EMC or with CMA or even NGen?
Yes, with all three. Jason Myers, who is the CEO of NGen, is on Trillium's board. And we collaborate on qualitative projects, on quantitative projects, on everything in between. And we definitely have a great relationship with NGen, certainly with the CME. They're one of our favorite organizations to work with. And there's a lot. They have this great platform. CME has a great platform called Ontario Made. And we share a lot of information there, and where they are showcasing the actual products manufactured in Ontario, we're showcasing the other side of that coin, the manufacturers. So NGen, CME, we work very closely together. We have a relationship with EMC. We attend a lot of their meetings. We tend to connect on a more local or regional level with them. And they are certainly aware of TrilliumGIS, and we would be open to further collaboration. But short answer, yes to all three.
Fantastic. And we had a second question there that was about work. You mentioned working collaboratively. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there about past year, what industry associations and what was the outcome of your collaborative work?
We collaborate with at least 24 industry associations in Ontario, and we would collaborate with more. We've identified about 80 that are actually active, and sometimes it is as simple as sharing information. Sometimes it's sharing tools, and sometimes it's just with communication. I really, as Trillium evolves, I think the two audiences groups of organizations that we really spend the most time collaborating with are municipal EDOs or regional EDOs and industry associations. And I think if you check out our annual reports, if you're interested, I think we're very explicit about that. So if there are any industry associations that you think we should be collaborating with, please let us know. We've got great relationships with about 24, and I would not rule out having great relationships with 24 more.
Fantastic. That's great. And today's theme has really been about working together, and Trillium obviously does it really well. Could you share, this question is from Olga. Could you share a little bit about successful attraction and retention practices of 5 manufacturers for women and youth candidates that you mentioned earlier, please?
Oh boy. Yes. And Kate, I'm going to rely on you to cut me off because I could talk about this all day. So in about 2 weeks, we'll have a report coming out that features an automaker, that features a large pharmaceutical company, a craft brewer, a paper manufacturer, and building and construction product manufacturer. Some of them are foreign owned, some of them are locally owned. All of them have actually moved the needle when it comes to recruiting, retaining, and supporting the career advancement of women. A lot of this has happened over the past 2, 3, 4 years. None of it has happened by accident. No one is sitting back and waiting for something to happen. They're all making it happen. All of them, when they roll out these programs, they involve women in these programs. All of them pay reasonably well, right? If you're kind of paying $15, $16 an hour and you think that's going to move the needle, it's not. And geez, there's so much more here I could say. I'll end there. If anyone, again, we'll have it's about a 5,000 word report. That'll be out probably mid-February. You'll hear a lot more about it. And if you'd like to contact me directly and just to learn more, I'll talk your ear off about it.
Awesome. Can you give us one little nugget about something innovative that one company's done? Do they have in-site daycare or something? Just a teaser.
Yes, well, some do have on-site daycare and let dogs in the workplace. On occasion, again, you might not let them on the production floor. One thing is one really interesting thing is stop asking people how much money they used to make. You're only going to exacerbate wage differentials there. Start classifying work. Start figuring out what this is worth and how much you should be paying someone. Make sure it's competitive and offer that, or you're going to just end up exacerbating existing wage differentials. One of the biggest things is that for many manufacturers, they find that women who apply, if 10 women apply, they'll hire, this is hypothetical, but if 10 women apply, they'll hire 3 of them. If 10 men apply, they'll hire 3 of them. But they might get 10 women to apply and 100 men to apply. So the challenge is getting people to apply. One of the things we're noticing, and this is just, shot fired, that all these companies are making improvements in senior management, in production, in STEM, including engineering. None of them are making progress in skilled trades. lots more. I could talk all day about this.
Great. Thanks so much, Brennan. So we've got another question here from Ryan Deska. Hi, Ryan. How you doing? Hope you're well. We have limited manufacturing in our community, but nonetheless very important for local jobs and the local economy. Workforce is definitely an issue, small rural community. We hear that time and time again. And we run the risk of losing companies to large urban centers. Does your organization have data or stories that help communicate the economic impact of small, medium manufacturers for rural Ontario? We're talking jobs, investment traction, tax revenue.
We have the start of that data. So we certainly would have kind of some lists of companies in there and could identify some economic impact. We have lots of qualitative information, so we have stories. Maybe that's something, when we think about a skunk work or a pilot project, maybe that's something that we could dig into. We certainly have the capability to learn more about it. There are bits and pieces of important information there, i.e. municipal tax revenues, that we just don't necessarily have access to publicly. But maybe that is something that we should be talking about, we should be pursuing more, because I can assure you, over the next year, over the next 2 years, over the next 3 years, workforce skills, talent, employment, human resources, that's not just an issue, that's the issue. That is the issue. And when you kind of combine that with getting people back to work, getting this economy back on track, that's going to be absolutely critical to Trillium's work, probably to a lot of your work, and to the success and competitiveness of Ontario's manufacturing ecosystem moving forward.
Great. Thanks so much, Ryan. Or Brendan. And Ryan says he looks forward to working with you on that project. So I think you've got your first project out of this conference. Great. Question from Audrey Ansell from Chatham, Kent. Hi, Audrey. You are gathering great information about manufacturers. Is there an avenue or opportunity for sharing information on apprenticeship opportunities at these manufacturers?
That could be another great project. Just this morning was talking with a large southwestern Ontario tooling automation company. This is their number one issue. And it is, again, the skilled trades thing is a real challenge moving forward. A large automotive parts manufacturer that operates in southwestern Ontario described, recruiting tool and die makers as fishing in a bathtub. Right? It's just that it's not there, or they're already employed and they're not leaving their current work. So certainly gathering information about apprentices, linking that up with some of the information we have, linking that up with opportunities. Absolutely, that is something that I think, we're certainly thinking about how do we actually operationalize that. Let's talk. I saw yesterday, there's a great, and I'm happy just if folks want to email me, I can share the link. There's a really, really good, really well visualized dashboard on the Statistics Canada website about just, the number of apprentices, how many people are registering, how many people are completing apprenticeships, what trades they're going into, where they are. And you might be able to find that quite easily, or email me and I'll just find the link. Again, it's on the StatsCan website. It's publicly available, and it's a really nice visualization.
Perfect. And now, stemming out of that, I have a question for you. We talk about the skills shortage a lot and the skilled trades. Do you have access to data that can help us determine, where the shortages are? Anecdotally, we hear from everybody that they're short on staff, and I know welders a couple of years ago were the hot commodity. Do you have access to that data, those hard numbers?
Not at our fingertips, but that's the exact kind of work we do. And so if that was, and again, if that's something that, if that's something that several municipal economic development officers communicated to us, that it was important for them, that would really give us a good hook to say, hey, this could be a priority. One of the things too, just so you're aware of how Trillium operates, we bring on a number of interns from the Ivy School of Business's Masters in Data Analytics program in the summer, usually starting in May. And so if there's projects like that that have a nice little box around them that are important and that involve, data collection, analysis, and visualization, kind of May to July, we have some real resources to put some, just these incredible kind of early career folks to work. I mean, I would venture that if you collaborated with us and we were engaging these interns and you got to know these interns, they could very well be working for you in the future. They're out of this world. They're exceptional. So.
Brilliant. And I see in the chat, Natasha from Huron County's piped up that she's also interested in that kind of data. So I think we've got project number 2 for you, Brendan. Looking forward to working, lots of work coming out of this chat session. Brendan's, we've shared your email and the link for your website, both in the chat. So anybody looking for that information can find it there in the chat. Another question for you. What is not included in TGIS?
Good question. And this is something that, this is a question that we get a lot. One, we don't include the headquarters of the sales office of a company that doesn't manufacture in Ontario. So, for example, Volkswagen, Nissan, BMW, they all have headquarters in Canada, but they're focused on sales and marketing. We would not include them, right? What this is really designed to do is communicate and promote the capabilities of companies that have bricks and mortar manufacturing establishments in Ontario. The other category, the other thing that we tend not to include are what we call FGPs, or factoryless goods producers. So this is kind of the other side of the co-packer, or the other side of the contract manufacturer. Very common in food and beverage, very common in pharmaceutical, very common in PPE manufacturing. One of the probably easiest examples would be the Ace Hill Beer Company. There's no brewery, right? They're a brand, they're in an office in West Toronto, and they contract a local brewery to make and sell their beer. So we would include that local brewery. We would not include Ace Hill. This has been something we really, really been working our way through when it comes to PPE manufacturers, and really trying to identify the companies that are actually manufacturing the PPE or the hand sanitizer or other medical products, and there's a lot of them. So we want to name them, but we're not really that interested in communicating about sales and distribution companies, especially if those sales and distribution companies are importing PPE and selling it in Ontario. That's fine. You might choose to purchase it from them, but we're not in the business of promoting them. We're in the business of promoting the actual manufacturers. So.
Fantastic. That's great. Thanks, Brendan. And it looks like we've got all of the questions from the Q&A. Anything you wanted to touch on where we've got a minute or 2 left here?
Sure. I mean, again, this is, as you can imagine, we're a relatively small organization. We're evolving every day. We love to hear new ideas. We're out there to network. We're out there to collaborate. Don't be shy. Who knows if it's going to be in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, but we'll get back on the road when it's appropriate to do so. And we'd love to come visit you. We'd love to come visit you and for you to show us what's on offer in your jurisdiction. I know we've got to get up north a bit more. And it was around this time last year, we went up to Thunder Bay, kind of, met a whole network of manufacturers, visited a couple of them, and we had a return trip planned where we were going to go to both Thunder Bay and Kenora and parts in between. In June of 2020, obviously, that didn't happen, but it is, when it is appropriate for us to come up north, if we get the invite, we're there. We're probably there if we don't get the invite. You'll just see us banging down your door, so.
You're going to party crash the north. I love it. Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Brendan. We really appreciate you joining us today and sponsoring this session. It was a really great addition to our conference education program and a great way to round out day two. It was really interesting and valuable information.
Thanks so much, Kate. Thanks so much to everyone on the organizing committee and on the board. We really look forward to collaborating with you and to working with EDCO moving forward. So,
Cheers.
thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone to visit the EDCO conference website, which has additional resources from our innovative partners, including Trillium. You can connect with them and see what they are doing through our Innovators Showcase directory. We also have some additional education provided by our partners on the Innovation on Demand page. You can see how they are evolving and creating resources for economic developers. Are you missing that in-person networking with your fellow economic developers? Just a little bit? We've got you covered. Join us on February 3rd at 4 p.m. for our conference happy hour. This will be the perfect opportunity to catch up with one another and make new connections. I know it's not the Hockey Hall of Fame, it's kind of more like the Living Room Hall of Fame. So join us on February 3rd at 4 p.m. We look forward to our upcoming sessions on Wednesday, February 3rd. Those will be Looking Over the Border, Opportunities to Evolve On with Kuzma, presented by Fragaman, Evolution in Diversity and Inclusion in the Workplace, and a special message from the Honorable Vic Fideli, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade. Today's sessions have now come to an end. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's EDCO Evolve On conference. Please look for your login details for next week's webinar on Tuesday, February 2nd. Please make sure to check your spam or junk folders, and if you don't receive your login information, please email Taylor Chamberlain at the EDCO office. We will keep the chat open for another 15 minutes or so feel free to continue to network with one another. Thanks so much, and we will see you next Wednesday.